Hello, I'm Philippa, and this is Unapologetic Edge, Perimenopause, Mothering, and Burnout. This podcast exists because something very specific keeps showing up in my work. Women in midlife, professional, capable, responsible women. Women parenting, leading, carrying emotional labour, managing complexity. And quietly thinking things like, why does everything feel harder than it used to? Why am I more reactive, more tired, less tolerant? Why does my capacity feel like it's disappearing even though I'm doing all the right things? And then they blame themselves. They assume they're failing at midlife, failing at motherhood, failing at resilience, failing at being the woman they've always been. And that assumption is completely wrong, because what's actually happening isn't failure. It's a life transition. Perimenopause is a becoming, like matrescence, the transition into motherhood, or adolescence. It's a fundamental reorganization of who you are. Your body is changing. Your identity is shifting. Your nervous system is recalibrating. You're not the same woman you were. You're not yet the woman you're becoming. And you're not yet the woman you're becoming. And here's what matters. Transitions like this don't just happen to you. They can break you open, or they can create something beautiful and powerful, like coal and diamond. Same carbon, different pressure, different outcome. The pressure is real. The intensity is real. The chaos and disorientation are real. But what gets created in that pressure, that's what we get to choose. Or at least that's what we get to support and shape. This podcast exists because I believe in that becoming. I believe perimenopause isn't something to survive or manage or get through. It's something to move through with clarity, precision, and support. It's an invitation to reclaim your edge, your power, your authenticity, your actual self. And my job is to support that, to help you navigate this transition in a way that creates beauty and power, not just survival. This podcast exists because perimenopause, motherhood, and burnout are not separate issues you solve separately. They are converging realities. And when they converge, the old strategies stop working. Here's what's actually happening. Perimenopause changes how your nervous system and body respond to stress. Your HPA axis, the system that manages your stress response, becomes more reactive. Sleep becomes fragmented. Emotional regulation gets harder. Your window of tolerance gets smaller. That's not weakness, that's biology. Motherhood, especially in midlife, asks something different of you emotionally. Your kids aren't small anymore, or they're struggling in ways that require more of you, or they're neurodivergent, or they're launching and you're grieving. The emotional labour shifts. It doesn't get smaller, it just changes shape. And often it gets heavier. And then there's burnout. The accumulated cost of holding too much for too long without enough recovery. That's not a mental health diagnosis. It's a signal that the system is overloaded. Put those three things together, perimenopause, motherhood, and sustained overload, and something has to give. Not because you're weak, because the system you've been running no longer matches the life you're living. Most women are taught a very specific way to solve problems. Understand more, try harder, optimize yourself, push through. That approach works for a while. In your 30s, your 40s, maybe even early into your 50s, you can push. Your nervous system has margin. Your hormones are stable. Your body cooperates with override. But perimenopause ends that. Your body stops cooperating with strategies that rely on pushing through exhaustion. It can't. Your nervous system is being asked to regulate a system that's becoming more reactive, not less. And here's where women get caught. They assume the problem is that they're not pushing hard enough, or not understanding themselves well enough, or not being disciplined enough. So they push harder. They read more books. They do more therapy. They journal. They optimize. They try to think their way out of something that's not a thinking problem. And then they feel worse because they can't solve it. And they blame themselves for that too. This is often the moment women come to me saying, I've done the work. I understand myself. I've been in therapy. Why am I still reacting like this? Why hasn't anything changed? That question matters because it tells us we're no longer dealing with a knowledge gap. Insight is not nothing. Understanding yourself matters, but insight alone doesn't change your nervous system's protective patterns. Here's why. Your nervous system operates beneath conscious awareness. The places where you're reactive, where you lose tolerance, where you feel like you're falling apart, those systems are neurological, not intellectual. They live in your body, not your thoughts. You can intellectually understand why you react a certain way and still have your nervous system bypass that understanding in the moment. You can have complete clarity about a pattern and still find yourself caught in it. That's not failure. That's how nervous systems work. And when your nervous system is already stretched, when you're in perimenopause, parenting, and running on fumes, it becomes even more reactive. The gap between understanding and changing gets wider, not narrower. So the old advice doesn't work anymore. The strategies that got you this far are running up against a different challenge now. That's not a personal failing. That's a signal that something needs to shift fundamentally. Midlife isn't a crisis. That's too dramatic. Midlife is a reckoning. It's the point where your body stops cooperating with the strategies that have worked your entire adult life. You can't push through exhaustion the same way. Your nervous system has less capacity to override what it's telling you. You can't absorb emotional labor without cost anymore. Parenting a struggling kid, managing a difficult workplace dynamic, holding someone else's crisis, it lands differently now. It stays with you. You can't keep functioning on adrenaline and goodwill. Your cortisol is already elevated from hormonal shifts. Your sleep is already fragmented. You don't have reserves to draw from. Perimenopause exposes this. Motherhood intensifies it. Burnout makes it impossible to ignore. And this is often when women say, I feel like I'm falling apart. I was fine before. What's wrong with me? The answer is, nothing is wrong with you. What's happening is that the margin you relied on has shrunk. Your system is being asked to do too much with too little recovery. That is not a character flaw. That's a system that's overloaded. Earlier in life, when you had more margin, coping worked. You pushed through. You could compartmentalize. You could recover quickly. You could metabolize stress effectively because your nervous system had room to do it. That wasn't because you were more resilient back then. It was because your system had more capacity. Midlife reduces that capacity, hormonally, neurologically, energetically. So the old strategies, the ones that got you here, they start to fail. And when they fail, women often do one of two things. They blame themselves. I'm not trying hard enough. Or they blame external circumstances. Everyone's asking too much of me. And both are partly true, but both also miss the actual problem. The actual problem is that the system is overloaded, not because you're weak, not because everyone is genuinely too demanding, but because you're trying to run midlife on the resources of your 30s. This podcast is here to interrupt that blame cycle, the self-blame and the blame of others. Although I won't lead with technical language every episode, we are talking about how your body and nervous system are responding to sustained demand in a life that's changing. We're talking about why your emotions feel bigger and harder to manage than they used to. Why insight alone doesn't create the change you're expecting. Why rest doesn't restore you the way the wellness industry promised. Why resentment is appearing where devotion used to live. Why being good at managing has become exhausting rather than sustaining. Why your tolerance for things you used to handle has shifted. Why you're more reactive, more irritable, more tearful. And we're doing it through the lens of real life, not theory, not optimization, not pretending you can mediate or journal your way out of a nervous system that's asking for something different. This is a space for women who are done being told to be more grateful, more positive, more regulated, more self-managed. You don't need another instruction manual. You've read them all anyway. You need understanding that fits what you're actually living. This podcast is for you if you're in perimenopause or approaching it and something feels fundamentally off. Not sick, not broken, just off. Your parenting and noticing your tolerance, patience, or emotional capacity has genuinely shifted. You're not the mother you were, and you're grieving that, or terrified of it, or both. You're successful by every external measure, but internally exhausted. You've achieved things, you're respected, and you feel like you're holding everything together with duct tape and willpower. You've done insight-based work, therapy, coaching, self-development, and you're still caught in patterns. You understand yourself better and you still react the same way. You're tired of self-monitoring and ready for something more honest. You're tired of optimizing yourself. You're tired of trying to figure out what's wrong with you. You don't need to be broken to be here. You don't need to be in crisis. You just need to be paying attention to what's actually happening. Some episodes will be reflective. We'll sit with what's real. Some will be educational. We'll look at the neuroscience and the biology of what's changing. Some will gently dismantle ideas you've been carrying for decades. The ones about what good mothers do, what resilient women handle, what you should be able to manage by now. We'll talk about emotions, relationships, capacity, resentment, identity, boundaries, and what actually supports recovery in this phase of life. We will not rush the solutions because rushing to things is part of what got you here. Instead, we'll get precise about what's actually happening because precision changes everything. This isn't a podcast about failing midlife. This is a podcast about understanding the shift you're in and learning how to meet it with clarity, self-respect, and support that actually fits. Because perimenopause is a becoming, and becomings are messy. They're disoriented. They break things apart, but they also create. This podcast is here to help you navigate that becoming in a way that doesn't just manage the chaos, that shapes it, that turns the pressure into power. You're not failing at this transition, you're moving through it. And you deserve support that understands what's actually at stake and what's actually possible. It's about recognizing that nothing has gone wrong. Your body is responding intelligently to the woman you're becoming. You're not failing at motherhood. You're not failing at resilience. You're not failing at being a woman. Perimenopause is asking you to become differently. And that's what we're going to explore together. In the next episode, we'll get precise about something many women misunderstand: the difference between normal emotional activation, your nervous system doing its job, and being genuinely triggered by something unresolved. And here's why that matters. When you're already stretched thin in perimenopause, parenting, and burnout, that distinction becomes critical. Because you need to know which feelings are telling you something important about right now and which are old patterns being reactivated in a nervous system that's asking for something different. We'll walk through the neuroscience in plain English. You'll learn your window of tolerance, You'll understand why insight alone doesn't resolve triggers. And you'll have a clearer picture of what actually needs to happen for things to shift. For now, I'll leave you with this. You're in a life transition, like adolescence, like matrescence, like all the becomings that matter. This one has the power to break you open or create something extraordinary. The pressure is real. The disorientation is real. And so is the potential. Your body is responding intelligently to what you're living. Your nervous system is not broken. It's reorganizing. Your capacity hasn't disappeared. It's being redistributed in service of who you're becoming. That's not failure, that's a signal. And signals are worth listening to. I'm Philippa. This is Unapologetic Edge, Perimenopause, Motherhood and Burnout. And I'm here to support your becoming because I've been there too. Thanks for being here.